A ship approaches a coastline at night. The crew cannot see the rocks. They cannot see the harbor. They watch for a single point of light that marks the boundary between deep water and shallow ground. The light appears. It turns. It does not fail. Somewhere inside a stone tower, a man is awake. The Atlantic coast had no safe approach after dark. Charts showed depths and contours, but currents moved sandbars and fog erased landmarks. A captain could estimate position, but estimation was not enough when rocks sat 20 feet from deep water. Fixed structures were built at dangerous points. A tower, a lamp, a lens designed to throw light across miles of open water. The light was visible long before the coastline. Ships adjusted course based on its presence. If the light went dark, the ship had no reference. The light did not adjust itself. It required continuous operation. Fuel had to be delivered, stored, and fed into the lamp. The lens had to remain clean. The rotation mechanism had to turn at the correct speed. If any part of this system failed, the light failed. A person was stationed at each tower to prevent that failure. The role was not symbolic. It was mechanical. The keeper lived inside the station or in a small structure adjacent to it. Supplies arrived by boat. Communication with the mainland was infrequent. The keeper's task was to maintain the light every night without interruption. No ship could be allowed to approach the coast and find the tower dark. This was the arrangement. The light was fixed. The keeper was required. The coastline did not change. Keeper's day began before sunset. The lamp room sat at the top of the tower. Stairs led up through narrow stone walls. The keeper climbed them several times each day. The first task was to check the fuel reservoir. Most stations used whale oil, then kerosene, then vaporized gas depending on the decade. The fuel level had to be sufficient to last through the night. If it ran low, the lamp would dim or go out before morning. The keeper filled the reservoir from stored canisters. Spillage was avoided. The lamp was lit before full darkness. The flame had to reach stable intensity before ships might depend on it. Once lit, the lens began to turn. The lens was not a single piece of glass. It was a composite structure built from prisms arranged to focus and magnify light. The rotation was powered by a clockwork weight system. The keeper wound the mechanism, and the weights descended slowly through the tower, turning gears that rotated the lens. The rotation created the characteristic flash pattern. Each station had a different interval. Ships identified their position by counting the seconds between flashes. The keeper recorded the time the light was lit. Throughout the night, the keeper returned to the lamp room to check the flame and add fuel if needed. The lens had to be cleaned. Salt air left deposits on the glass. Soot from the flame accumulated on the inner surface. The keeper wiped the lens with cloth and solvent. Visibility depended on this. A dimmed light was a dangerous light. The work was the same every day. The same stairs, the same fuel, the same rotation. The keeper did not decide when the work was necessary. It was always necessary. The light station was not located near towns. It was placed where the coastline was most dangerous. Access was difficult. Some stations stood on islands. Others were built on rocky points separated from the mainland by rough water. Supplies arrived every few weeks, weather permitting. The keeper lived in small quarters attached to the tower or in a separate building nearby. Rooms were plain. A bed, a table, a stove. Food was stored in quantities sufficient to last between deliveries. The keeper prepared meals alone. There was no supervision. The keeper was trusted to maintain the light without instruction or inspection. If the light failed, ships would be lost before anyone on the mainland knew the system had stopped. The keeper had no way to signal for help if the equipment broke. Repairs were made with available tools and materials. Some failures could not be corrected. The keeper improvised or waited for the next supply delivery. Contact with other people was rare. Family members sometimes lived at the station, but many keepers were alone. Conversation was limited. Radio communication arrived late in the profession's history. Before that, the keeper spoke to supply boat crews and to no one else for weeks at a time. Weather isolated the station further. Storms could delay supply ships for days. Fog persisted for weeks in some seasons. The keeper remained inside and continued the routine. There was no variation in responsibility based on conditions. The light had to operate regardless of weather. Ships needed it most when visibility was worst. The keeper understood this. The work was not interrupted by discomfort or isolation. It continued because it had to. Maritime traffic increased steadily through the 19th century. More ships carried more cargo along the same routes. Fishing fleets, freight vessels, passenger steamers, all of them passed within sight of the coastal lights. The lights became infrastructure. Captains planned their approaches around known light stations. Navigation charts listed every lighthouse by name, location, and flash pattern. A ship traveling south down the Atlantic coast would pass from one light to the next, confirming position by the interval of each flash. The system worked because the lights did not fail. A single dark tower could cause a ship to miscalculate its position by miles. Shallow water, reefs, and harbor entrances were unforgiving. Errors resulted in grounded vessels, damaged hulls, lost cargo. The keeper was responsible for preventing this. There was no backup system. If the light went out, the keeper had to restore it immediately. This expectation was understood when the role was accepted. The pressure was not discussed, it was inherent. The keeper did not receive praise for successful nights. Success was the baseline. Failure was unacceptable. As traffic increased, so did the consequences of a single dark night. More ships meant more captains relying on the same light. The keeper's routine did not change, but the stakes behind it grew heavier. The same fuel. The same lens, the same watch. The number of lives depending on that watch kept rising. The keeper had no way to know how many ships passed on a given night. The work was done without feedback. The light turned. The ships continued. That was the measure of success. Automated lighting systems were developed in the early 20th century. Electric lamps replaced oil and gas flames. Timers controlled when the light turned on and off. Sensors detected failures and triggered backup systems. The machinery no longer required a person to wind it, fuel it, or monitor it continuously. The light could operate for weeks without human presence. Maintenance visits could be scheduled rather than constant. The first automated lights were installed at remote or low-traffic stations. Keepers were withdrawn gradually. Some stations kept a reduced staff for repairs and inspection. Others were converted to full automation and left unattended. The transition was not sudden. Automated systems were tested over years. Reliability had to be proven before keepers were removed from critical stations. Failures still occurred, but they could now be detected remotely and addressed during scheduled visits. The keeper's role shrank from continuous presence to periodic inspection, then to occasional maintenance, then to nothing. The last keepers were reassigned or retired. The towers remained operational, but no one lived inside them. The light still turned. The lens still focused. The flash pattern still marked the coastline. Ships continued to rely on the signal. The mechanism simply ran itself now. There was no ceremony when the last keeper left a station. Supplies were collected. The door was locked. The light continued to operate. The profession ended quietly, one station at a time, over the course of decades. Coastal light stations still stand along the shoreline. Most are automated. A few have been decommissioned entirely, replaced by offshore buoys or electronic navigation. The towers that remain in operation are visited by technicians a few times each year. Bulbs are replaced. Batteries are checked. The machinery is inspected and adjusted. The buildings that once housed keepers are often empty. Some have been converted to museums. Others are leased to private tenants. Many are simply locked and left alone. The lamp rooms still function, but no one sleeps below them. The stairs are climbed only during maintenance visits. The work that once required constant attention now requires none. The light turns on at dusk. It turns off at dawn. It does not need to be wound or fueled. The lens no longer requires daily cleaning. Salt and moisture still accumulate, but the intervals between cleanings are measured in months, not hours. Ships pass the lights without knowing whether anyone is present. They do not need to know. The signal is reliable regardless. Navigation has shifted towards satellite and radar, but the lights remain part of the system. They are backup now, not primary, but they are still there. The towers stand in the same places they were built. The light still marks the boundary between safe water and dangerous ground. It still turns through the night. The only difference is that no one watches it anymore. The ships continue. The light continues. The keeper is gone.